Hey there, it's Mr. Damon again, and I am so glad that we get to spend time together tonight. Now, my question for you is, has anybody told you how amazing you are today? Let me start over. Hey, it's Mr. Damon again, and I am so glad that we get to spend time together tonight. Now, has anybody today told you how amazing you are? It's true. You are incredible. There is nobody else like you in the entire galaxy. I mean, the universe. God created only one you. And the fact that we get to spend time together is literally one of the highlights of my day. Well, speaking of days, how was your day today? Was it full? Was it busy? Was it not so busy? What was the favorite thing that happened today? Did something happen today that you liked? Well, that's great. Was there anything that happened today that maybe you didn't like so much? You know what? Come to think of it, there are things that we don't like that happen to us every single day, huh? And when things don't go our way, it can make us feel sad, can't it? But do you know that Jesus gave you a superpower that helps you choose to be joyful even when things don't go your way? That's right. It's true. And our story today from the Bible tells us exactly what that superpower is. You see, in our story tonight, we are going to talk about Paul. Do you remember that guy? His name used to be Saul, and he's the one that Jesus knocked off of his horse with the blinding light, and he went from hating Jesus to becoming a Jesus follower himself. Well, Paul and some of his friends needed to go to Rome. Now, Rome is a city that exists in the country of Italy, and it's still there. And so Paul and his friends got on a ship, and they started sailing across the Mediterranean Sea. And after they had gone part of the way, the unexpected happened. A huge storm swept across the water. The wind howled, and the waves crashed against the ship so hard that the sailors thought the boat was going to sink like a rock to the bottom, and that they were going to die. Glub, 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 glub. Well, the storm lasted for days. Many of the people on the boat were too scared to even eat. But one of the days, Paul told the rest of the people on board, "Last night, an angel told me that all of us are going to survive this storm. All of us will live. So be brave. God is going to take care of us." And after a while, just like God promised Paul, the crew saw land. And they were like, "Land ahoy! Safe at last!" But they weren't out of the woods yet. Because before they could reach the shore, the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. Now, a sandbar is when the sand on the bottom of the ocean comes up right below the surface of the water. So you can't see that it's there, but it's super dangerous for boats because they can actually get stuck in the sand. Well, now that their boat was stuck in the sandbar, the waves behind them began to break the ship into pieces. Crack! Everyone started jumping overboard into the ocean and swimming or floating to shore. And what do you know? All of the people on board made it to the beach safe and sound, just like God promised Paul. But the men were cold and they were wet, and so people on the island took pity on them and built a big bonfire so that everybody could get warm. Well, everybody started walking around and picking up twigs and sticks and branches in order to make the fire bigger. And so Paul did the same thing. He was helping out, and he had a big armload full of branches. Little did he know that tucked inside that armload of branches was a small but very poisonous snake. And as Paul made his way to the fire, the snake crawled out from the branches and bit Paul on the hand. Chomp! When everybody saw it, They were like, oh no, that's terrible because you just got bit by the super ridiculous poisonous snake. You're gonna die. And everybody waited to watch him fall over dead. And they waited, and they waited. And Paul stood there and he looked at the snake hanging off his hand until finally he was like, I'm kind of bored with this. And he shook the snake off into the fire. But he didn't die. In fact, he didn't even get sick because God had protected him again. When the people on the island saw the miracle, they realized that, hey, this Paul guy, I think he may know God. And you know what happened next? Paul went through the island and he prayed for every single sick person and watched as God healed every single person's sickness and made them well. Even though the shipwreck had seemed like a bad thing, God used it to bring Paul to that island and to help an entire island worth of sick people. And in doing so, God showed the people on that island his love and his power. Do you think Paul wanted to be in the middle of the ocean during the storm? No way. Or get shipwrecked? Not a chance. Or how about get bit by a super poisonous snake? Yikes. But just like you had things happen today that maybe weren't so fun, things happened to Paul during his day that weren't fun either. But do you know, when Paul had bad things or unfun or difficult things happen to him, he remembered something very important. What did he remember? He remembered that Jesus was right there with him. Jesus was with him in the storm. Jesus was right there with Paul when his ship broke apart. And Jesus was with him when the snake bit him in the hand. Jesus was with Paul the whole time. And he knew it. And so when Paul thought about the bad things, it didn't steal his joy or, like everybody else, ruin his day. And just like Paul, when things happen to us that we don't like, or maybe we don't agree with, what do? Do we give up hope and say, that's terrible, my day's ruined, it's over, blah? Or do we stop and remember that Jesus is right there with us and that he's promised us, just like he promised Paul, that he can take all of the bad, difficult, hard, sad things that happen to us, and if we'll trust him, Jesus will turn those things into something good. Let's do this. Let's just take a second. And would you mind just closing your eyes? And the reason why we close our eyes, it just keeps us from getting distracted. And I just want you to imagine something. I want you to see that moment that happened to you today or yesterday that maybe wasn't so fun. Now, I want you, in your imagination, to see Jesus standing right there next to you. Can you see him? Do you see him smiling at you? Do you see him protecting you and caring for you and keeping something even worse from happening? Just like Paul, Jesus is with you during the fun moments and in the moments that aren't fun. And the great news is when we remember that, all of a sudden, instead of having bad things ruin our day, thankfulness and gratitude begin to well up on the inside of our hearts. And even though we may not like it, and we don't have to like it, we can still be grateful and thankful to Jesus that he never leaves you or walks away from you. Tonight as you go to sleep, I just want you to imagine Paul being in the middle of the ocean in that storm. Imagine him having to swim for that beach. Imagine him having that snake bite his hand. And then imagine Paul walking through the island and Jesus healing all of those sick people through Paul. And do you know, just like Jesus was with Paul, he will always be with you. Have a great night's sleep. Sweet dreams. Good night.